Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a great Friday, and this here game, it's an extremely interesting game that will remind you of some of the games Alpha Zero played against Stockfish. This game was a suggestion. It was sent to me by user Alan Bellon over Twitter. Here he says in the message, Lila Chess Zero played a bonus match on TCEC against Stockfish 1.0, rated 2754. It won. I don't really understand what he meant by this. 10 and a half, -1, -1. I believe this means 10 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss, but then again, I don't know why it would be written like this. But regardless, that gives an approximate performance rating of 3080 elo. It also beat Scorpio 5-1 and went fairly even with the Baron. I found this game interesting. So this is the game he sent me, and I will also include all of the links that could be of some use to you in the description below. So, Lila Chess Zero versus Stockfish. This is Stockfish 1. This is not the strongest version of Stockfish. And for those of you that don't know, TCEC is the Top Chess Engine Championship that is played in seasons. Now Season 12 is being played, and Lila is currently competing in Division 4. So not in Division 1 with all the strongest engines where Stockfish and Houdini are playing, but rather with some of the weaker ones. And by weaker I mean rated below 3000 or around 3000. And here is a bonus match game, and this is a bonus match. This game was not a part of the actual TCEC Season 12, and it's extremely interesting. So let's check it out. We have d4. So Lila opens with the queen's pawn, d6, we have the queen's pawn opening, and now c4. So not going for e4, like, I don't know, I've seen many players who play d4, and then when this is met with d6, they will transpose into the Perse defense with e4. But okay, d4, we have e5, the rat defense, and e3. Knight to d7, knight to c3, and knight g to f6 now. So transposing into the old Indian defense. g3, c6, and okay, c6, a very nice way to counter bishop to g2, bishop to g2 nevertheless, and the bishop to e7. b3, Lila is now preparing to fianchetto both bishops, or not, we'll see. We have castles, and now knight to g2, e2. Knight to b6, and Lila castles here. Queen to c7, and finally e4. And here you have a couple of options. You could play something like e captures on d4, but after knight captures, black didn't really achieve anything. He only improved the position of white's knight. So instead, bishop to d7 by Stockfish. h3. c5, and now d5. Lila doesn't mind blocking the center, and very soon the queen side will also be blocked, as you'll see in the game. a5, Stockfish would really enjoy pushing this pawn to a4, but Lila pushes a4, doesn't allow. So knight to e8. The only breakthroughs that are currently available in this position would be if white pushed f4 and if black could play f5. So other than that, the position is pretty much blocked here. So after this a4 move, we have knight to e8. So perhaps preparing f5. Bishop to d2, and now queen to b8. Stockfish doesn't enjoy f5 immediately. After e captures on f5, bishop captures on f5, f4, e captures, knight captures. It's considered to be a better position for white. After something like bishop to f6, queen to e2, preparing knight e6, queen e7, and the exchange of queens comes, and then rook comes to e1, and white will have a better game here. The knight is coming to e6, the rooks are very nicely placed. You have to decide what to do with the bishop here, probably rook to f7, but all in all, white would be better here. So after this, bishop to d2, queen to b8, and now Stockfish begins his waiting game. We have f4, bishop to f6, and now f5, even that. So Lila does not mind blocking the position even further. Knight to c7, with ideas of knight to a6 coming to b4, and then maybe in the future it will be useful to go to c2 or d3. But who knows? Another waiting move by Stockfish. King to h2, and now queen back to d8. We have h4, and now queen back to b8. So Stockfish doesn't really have a move here. Knight to g1. Knight to a6, now Stockfish is preparing knight to b4, knight to f3, and now knight does come to b4, and Lila pushes g4. Rook to a6, and here we have g5 even. Bishop to e7, and here we have a very interesting position. You all know what all of you would play if you had this position on the board in a bullet game or in a blitz game, or maybe even in a classical game. But for example, the top engine recommendations here that I'm using are h5, knight to e2, preparing queen to h5, and other than this, knight to b5. But Lila goes for the immediate f6, which does make sense. I mean, who wouldn't push f6 in this position? Bishop to d8. If you capture the pawn, then you're losing the game terribly. For example, g captures, bishop captures on f6, now knight to g5. You open up the attack from the rook to the bishop. Queen to d8 defends the bishop, and now comes knight captures on h7, and this is losing. Of course, the knight cannot be captured, but if you do capture it, I mean, there's really no better move to play. You could play bishop to g7, but then the same idea will apply as if you capture the knight, only white will be up, will still have his knight. So if you capture, then comes queen h5 check, king goes here, and now rook to g1, preparing some nasty discoveries. After bishop to g7, and now bishop to h3. The threat is, of course, rook captures on g7, and there's really no good way to defend this. If you try rook e8 to make like an escape route for your king, still doesn't work. Simply rook captures, king captures, and queen h6 check, locking out the king, not allowing him to escape via f8. Now rook to g1 check, bishop blocks, and after you give up all of your pieces, you are now in checkmate. So after this very nice f6 move by Lila, the immediate f6, of course not capturing, but bishop to d8. We have f captures on g7, king captures on g7, and now knight to g1, making room for the queen to jump to h5. Bishop to e7, and now comes bishop to h3, preparing bishop to f5. King to h8, making room for the rook and also the queen. And now bishop to f5, and it's very interesting. Of course, queen to h5 to h7 would be deadly, so if you tried something like rook to g8 maybe and rook to g7 to defend, white will immediately sacrifice this bishop on h7. After king captures, of course, queen comes to h5 with check, king here, and now, of course, either queen to h6 will be checkmate, or rook captures on f7, also a very nice checkmate. So, after bishop to f5, Stockfish grabs the bishop, bishop captures on f5, e captures on f5, and now knight to d7. There really isn't an active move here to be made for black. This is just embarrassing. f6, now pushing the bishop even further, bishop to d8, and now knight to e4. There's no rush to play something like queen to h5 or anything. Lila knows that Stockfish is basically without a move. Rook to g8, we have knight to h3, and now queen to c8. We have h5, rook to f8, and now queen to g4. Rook to a8, we have g6, f captures on g6, h captures on g6, and here rook captures on f6. Queen to h5, and here knight to f8 was played. You have to defend checkmate on h7. But it doesn't matter. Even if you play something like rook captures on g6 to eliminate the threat, this is still winning for white. It's actually a forced checkmate in 8. You're welcome to try and find it, or maybe you just want to try and find the first move or how to continue the attack. Either way, you're welcome to pause the video here and try to find the winning idea. So I will give it a couple of seconds as usual. For those of you who found it, congratulations, you just defeated Stockfish, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, rook to f7 is the move. Of course, now the threat is queen captures on h7, this will be checkmate. So after knight f8 defending this, rook captures, this comes with check. Rook to g8, and now queen to f7, threatening queen captures, or if the rook captures, then queen captures rook on f8 will also be checkmate. Queen g4, only defense, and now bishop to g5, you either capture with the queen and then you lose the queen, or you capture with the bishop and then the queen is no longer defending the rook on g8, so you'll just capture on g8 and this is checkmate. So after black gives one more check, you'll simply block this, and now it's all over. You have to give up your queen, and after white captures, it's game over. So, after queen to h5, knight to f8 was played. Here we have knight captures on f6, bishop captures on f6, and it was in this position that Stockfish resigned the game. So this is something we haven't heard in a very long time, ever since AlphaZero played that game match against Stockfish, but it's very satisfying to hear, I'm sure you'll all agree. Why did Stockfish resign here? Well, there's really nothing to do. Leela can simply play rook captures on f6, and now everything loses. The threat is, of course, rook captures knight on f8, removing the defender of the h7 pawn, and then queen captures on h7 will be checkmate. For example, queen e8, now rook captures, and now either you'll capture with the queen and then queen captures on h7 will be checkmate, or you can play something like king to g7 and then queen to h6, or even nicer, bishop to h6 will be checkmate. And even if you go for the I don't know, for the most annoying defense, knight captures on g6, then knight to g5. Again, you're threatening checkmate on h7. After queen defense, now you get knight f7 check. King to g7, and now queen to f5. The threat is, of course, bishop to h6, and there's really nothing you can do. You have to run. Now comes knight captures on e5, discovered check. King has to go back. Now rook f7 check, king h8, and queen to f6. Forcing black to give up his queen, and this will again be checkmate. But yeah, after bishop captures on f6, Stockfish decided that there's no point in continuing, and Stockfish resigned the game. So yeah, a very nice game by Leela Chess Zero. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if I was really unsuccessful, I tried to find the standings of the TCEC Season 12 Division 4 where Leela is playing, but I couldn't find any standings or her results against other engines. So yeah, I will be informing you as Leela makes some other interesting games like this. So yeah, I do hope you enjoyed this. I would like to thank Alan Asbury, Milos Knežević, Vincent Bovard, Harrison Baudry, and Marcus Hasselby for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon with, if the voting doesn't drastically change, the 2013 Candidates Tournament. Thank you all.